This is the Morgan Kimbarow Show. Our guest today is Ricardo Martinez, aka Red Pill Rick. He is a crypto evangelist, he is a crypto coach, and we're going to have a conversation about cryptocurrency, the current state of the economy, on the day that the White House is currently holding a crypto summit. Ricardo, thank you for coming on the show.
Beautiful. Thank you for having me, Morgan. I know we've talked about this for a while now, and so it's a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
100%, and I'm glad that we're making it happen. So we're friends, and we met via politics, right? Through our advocacy, we have very aligned values on what the economy should look like. And, you're somebody who's also very prophetic, who's speaking things into existence and has been able to diagnose trends, see things before they happened. And, you've made some predictions that have come true over the years. And so, very, very high brain power there. But first and foremost, want to start with you, who you are, Ricardo, and share that with our audience.
Most importantly, thank you so much though for having me. I know that we're friends first and foremost, and I just wanted to say that I admire you very much in what you're doing here with the podcast. Being able to get the word out to so many people, and really do it in a way where you're doing it in your own way. I think that that's so commendable, and I just wanted to just start off by commending you, Morgan, for all your efforts locally and everything that we're doing here digitally to really reach the masses. And so, with me, I'm Ricardo Martinez. I go by Red Pill Rick online, and I'm a crypto evangelist, crypto coach. I've been in the space for 9 years now, and almost a decade. And so I've been really riding the roller coaster ride of cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, and the evolution towards this bigger idea of Web3 and how it intertwines with the political climate and where we're currently at, where sovereign nations now are actually going to start jumping into the crypto space, causing a lot of liquidity to flood into the markets and inflating the prices from where they're currently at right now. And so I believe this is a golden opportunity for not only just you and I, but for everyone here listening to be able to jump in and solidify their piece of the pie and really, gain generational wealth, as it transitions on these digital platforms.
100%. And so let's talk about cryptocurrency. Let's talk about the history. Let's talk about where things are today. And again, as something, let's just say even less than 3 years ago, 2 years ago, maybe even a year ago, was seen as taboo or conspiratorial, right? Now you're seeing crypto ETFs, right? It's becoming more institutionalized, right? Now you have President Trump signing an executive order to create a strategic crypto reserve. So let's get your insight on just the history of crypto and where things stand today.
Yeah, of course. And so crypto has evolved since Bitcoin, right? The inception in 2008, right? And the real response of cryptocurrency and the industry in general was out of the 2008 crash that happened in the banking system. And that caused, alternatives to really spring up. Alternatives as hedges of inflation or hedges against the dollar per se, right? With its purchasing power being diluted so much over time, about like 90% now, we're seeing that, what traditional financial people would do is they would really run to a hard asset like gold. We're now seeing the new generations also incorporate Bitcoin and other crypto assets in that conversation. And that's usually where it starts, right? Jumping into cryptocurrency, you can go down a lot of different rabbit holes because there's so much innovation that has kind of happened since Bitcoin's inception. But that being said, there's a lot more opportunities to really see how the space is evolving and how it's really playing into a grander narrative that economists are calling token economics. And so really adding that layer of tokens on top of what was originally known as traditional finance, and then building a bridge towards, those who have really found comfort in that institutionalized world, right? With the Bitcoin ETF, the Ethereum ETF that also was coupled with it last year, we're now seeing people take their 401ks or their traditional finance money and be able to purchase Bitcoin through the ETF, right? But The only difference there is that the individuals aren't actually self-custodying their crypto, and instead the centralized government still is, custodying those digital assets for them. But it's still a good, transition where, as an investor, you can still take advantage of the, gains of crypto and the market, but also not have the complexities of having to, custody your own crypto, which is really what the whole spirit and idea of the crypto community is about.
So crypto is becoming more centralized, right? It's becoming more mainstream, as we can
Correct.
see. So what do you think about when somebody like Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan, says that crypto is a scam? Why do you think he's saying that?
Correct. And so it's funny because, a lot of the bigger players, Jamie Dimon included, has really switched their stance as of lately,
Mm-hmm.
on digital assets in general, right? For a long time, they had said that it was a scam. For a long time, they had said it was a Ponzi scheme. For a long time, they had said that these digital tokens don't have value. When their organizations were actually buying at the low prices that these cryptos were at the moment. And so now that we're seeing a switch in tune when it comes to the administrations, we're seeing them also change their tune when it comes to regulation and embracing digital assets. And so with that, Jamie Dimon, as well as Larry Fink from BlackRock, the biggest asset managers on planet Earth, right, are now saying that blockchain technology is going to be the future. And they said that the first wave of this digital revolution was going to be the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF, which we've already seen. And then the next stage would be the tokenization of all financial assets. And what that means is they're going to digitize all of these assets that have been illiquid for so long. All these asset classes that, were very hard to really settle your and sell these assets. You will now be able to do them by digitizing them on these digital marketplaces. And so that's where the world is headed, right? To instant settlement, to find people that are willing to either pick up your entire value of your asset or maybe even a fraction, the same way you would buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. But they're fractionalizing the world with this technology. And these digital tokens will really be, at the forefront of it all. And that's why it's very hard for, the average person to really wrap their heads around, cryptocurrency, is because there's a lot of different classifications of different types of tokens out there that are creating this token economy. And with all these different use cases, there's opportunity really to bake in value. And it really comes down to how we transfer value from one person to another. And that's really what I see this technology disrupting and really enabling, you and I and others to be able to barter in a way like we never have before, where we can program into the deal or the tokens whatever it is that the parameters of our agreement are. And that's really how I see it kind of really changing the infrastructure that has already kind of traditionally been in place.
So cryptocurrency, right, is much more volatile, right, than normal stocks, or right. So what impacts the price of, let's just say, Bitcoin, right? It's very volatile, right? And
Right.
you time it correctly, you can make a lot of money. Although Bitcoin has gone up over the long term, right? I
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm not as advanced investor as you are. I'm kind of a guy who's just on the Warren Buffett style of just buy and hold forever.
Yeah.
But so I dollar cost average. I've made money on
Mm-hmm.
on Bitcoin, right, over the years. But for someone that's, you're selling, hey, you should be investing in Bitcoin, right? Like, talk about what makes the price go up and go down.
Of course. And so there's a lot of factors that really affect the markets, right? And it is really pegged to the traditional financial world a lot. So a lot of the announcements and the speculation that really happens is coming from the governments and their stances on the different FOMC meetings that are happening. and where the actual sentiment of investors are. And if we're high greed or high fear, index, time periods, you can really kind of jump in while it's very, fearful in the market. You can see like, hey, this may be the time where everybody's running in panic, but while everyone's zigging, I can zag, right? And you can be able to plant and dollar cost average in those times when, it's down in the volatile times. But when it comes to the actual price, right, of let's just take Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin is actually pegged to supply and demand, right? The supply is actually fixed in nature. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that are in existence, and 19 million have been mined already. And so that 2 million is really the opportunity and the timeline that everyone's really going off of. And it's vesting off of a 4-year cycle. So every 4 years, you're seeing the half-life of that remaining 2 million be cut in half. And so as more people start to realize that there's a finite supply of Bitcoin, that's when they'll realize that it really is digital gold. And that's really what has solidified its place in the market and has really kind of gained its reputation as digital gold today already. And that's really what I see it as, really as a hedge against inflation, as a store of value. Me personally, in my portfolio, that's how I use Bitcoin. When trading, there may be other cryptocurrencies that may have better returns, in the short term. And so what I would tell people is to really analyze which cryptocurrencies have real world utility, which ones have use cases that are going to solve real world problems, because those ones are the ones that are solidifying their place in the economy of tomorrow. And those are the ones where I would like to plant all of my long-term holdings in and do most of my speculative plays in something, that would be, far more community driven or speculative or short term.
Gotcha. Okay. So for Trump's strategic crypto reserve, right, it included Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, XRP. I think there was another one, right?
Yes. The last one that he had mentioned was Cardano.
Okay, Cardano.
Yeah.
So investing in those, right, would that be kind of more of a long-term play, that we have confidence in this long-term, that we can back, some currency that we have as American, right, that we have that, it's there's a confidence factor in those five to be putting your money in long-term.
100%.
Okay.
But in the end, none of this is financial advice, right?
Totally.
But what I would say is that the government has confidence in these cryptocurrencies for the long haul. Therefore, as investors like you and I, we should too. And as we see more liquidity or more money flooding into these cryptos, you're going to see the prices inflate over time too. And really understanding like, hey, these are the ones that are solidifying their place in the economy of tomorrow. And those cryptos are going to be the ones that are going to be there when everything else starts crumbling, and all the noise starts to be able to settle, and all the dust settles, right? You're going to be able to see that, hey, there are these ones that are going to be a part of a bigger ecosystem as well. And so if I had to break down cryptos, not only would it be the ones that Donald Trump just announced in his executive order for this strategic reserve, but I would include, all of the big narrative plays that are really happening and that are being built around this blockchain technology, because it's all going to come together and interconnect. Even though it hasn't today, that's where it's all headed with this idea of Web3. And so what I see is that Bitcoin started it all and is that, digital gold, first mover. But Ethereum, was the second that really kind of took center stage, that was creating this whole idea of Web3. And
Can you explain Web3?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So Web3 is an internet that is built on blockchain technology. It removes the monopolies of Web 2 that we see today, where we've centralized all the data and the power in the hands of big tech and all the big tech companies like Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, you name it, right? These are the big players that have really taken a monopoly on data. And as we move into the information age, we're seeing that we have now moved into a world where data is the new wealth. And that data is now more valuable than oil. So these companies, these big tech companies in Web 2, have centralized all that data and have now monetized it. That's why they're so big. And that's why they have so much influence and power. Whereas in the Web3 world, creators like you and I that are have data, we can then monetize it for ourselves and be able to then also permission it out and sell it when we choose. And that's really the vision of a Web3 world where you can no longer be censored by these big tech companies as well, because they're no longer the gatekeepers to the services in which they provide.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So right now you want to log into Instagram, right? You have to put in your username and your password. And in doing that, you're asking Instagram for permission to the account that they've given you that you've been harvesting all this data for them. You know, whereas in a Web3 world, these services will actually be public services. There will be no intermediary company that you're asking for permission. You'll just connect to the platform with your digital wallet, and you'll bring your data with it. And that's really the vision of a Web3 world, right? Where creators and individuals like you and I are empowered as sovereign beings to be able to do as we please with our digital data and our digital footprint.
Gotcha. So Web3, right? It's access to the internet that, you know, we don't have to give away our data unknowingly or against our will, basically.
100%. And right now, we've created these monopolies on these Web2 platforms because we're so addicted to these social media dopamine fix that of the scroll, right? And so to be able to counteract that, we have to be producers instead of consumers, right? We have to produce content for the people to win the battle of the ideas, right? Because what's happening is perception is being molded on these platforms. And the perception of the masses is really what both sides are really fighting for, and which ideas are going to really win over everyone, and which ones do you really see as like a conducive solution to our nation and all of its problems. And so when I look at finances, I feel like financial literacy is the biggest need for people, right? Because how can we understand tokens and Bitcoin and crypto and mining and all these crazy concepts if we don't first have a foundation in, you know, financial literacy? And then adopt the mindset of decentralization for not only my own personal life, but for everyone to really thrive, right? And how can you and I play a role in that evolution? And that's really how I've been really trying to position not only my businesses, but, you know, how I carry myself as a person and how I connect with, you know, my clients to really understand, hey, this evolution is happening and so many people are, you know, barely waking up to it. And so how can we provide them with that red pill awakening in a way that can allow them to make it practical, make it useful for their personal finance, and have them inch their way into this world with us?
I like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about financial literacy, right? And let's start with the history of money, right? You talk about a barter system, and that was the first way that human beings used to exchange goods.
Right.
And it was inefficient because there was no store of value, right? It was all subjective, right? I'll give you a pound of hay for 5 eggs, or right?
Right.
And someone says, no, you know, I want 6 eggs, right? So it was very inefficient because people had to go back and forth. And, you know, that's where gold and silver came, right, as stores of account for money. And so, you know, obviously the United States has had a very interesting, well, I would say the world as well, through our evolution of currency, right? From a currency that was backed by something tangible like gold to now a fiat currency. So
Correct.
let's go through that. Let's hone in on the history of the dollar in America.
Yeah. And so going through just value exchange, a barter system to now then the gold to then the fiat system, right? That we see today. We've now digitized that system where now we have digital banking. And then the last evolution to that would be this crypto boom that we're really going to see. What I believe is that, when Nixon moved us away from the gold standard, he literally shifted us into a trust-based system that the value of the dollar was going to continue to just, hold its value over time. And when you really look at it, it's really lost about 90% of its purchasing power since its creation. And why is that? It's because of our monetary policy, the way in which we've entrusted the Federal Reserve, a privately owned bank, to actually control our money supply. And in doing so, they've overprinted the dollar to the point where now the purchasing power of it has really gone through the roof and into the ground to the point where, everything costs so much. Inflation has really risen to the point where, the eggs are going crazy right now and everyone's talking about it, right? And I anticipate that we're going to see more of that because I don't anticipate that the United States monetary policy is actually going to change. And in doing so, you're going to see people flee to other forms of store of value that have been appreciating over time. And if you look at Bitcoin, and since its creation, it's actually doubled and appreciated every year aside from the year 2015. And at that rate, you can see that as your Bitcoin doubles, you're able to actually pay for more things because, everything actually costs half off, when priced in Satoshis instead of dollars or cents, right? And I don't anticipate the death of the dollar at all. I believe that crypto and the United States dollar are symbiotic. And the United States dollar is at the foundation of the crypto industry because when you trade one crypto to another, in order to avoid the volatility of all of these cryptocurrency assets, you use what we call stable coins, right? Which are actually pegged to the dollar. And they believe it to be stable, right? And so all I'm seeing is that maybe the paper printing is not going to stop, but the fiat system may not be the primary system. You're going to see a hybrid system, and one that, based off of Donald Trump's stance, one that is going to embrace the freedom of choice for you and I to be able to barter with one another with whatever store of value that we choose.
So why did we get away from the gold standard? Why did we decide in 1972? Well, let's take it even back a step, take it 50, 60 years previously,
Mm-hmm.
right where we started to implement, a Federal Reserve to dictate monetary policy. Like, why did we even need to do that?
So, in the end, the Federal Reserve, was something that we needed to implement to really help out, in a lot of different ways. World War One, World War Two, got us in a place, financially that we needed centralized banking, on the federal level, and so there's always going to be a need for it, right? For those that require dependency and require, intermediaries to an extent, right? How much of that power in which we centralize into these entities, is really the question. And I know you're a history buff too, Morgan. Coming into, centralized banking, we were at a time where, you know, we stayed out of World War II for a long time up until the end, and we were playing a role where, we were helping fund, the war and trying to really be, this entity that was really preaching peace until we were forced to come into the war, right? But in the end, that left us in a really good place, financially, with the United States dollar as the global reserve currency. And so I don't anticipate that, that will change, anytime soon. I just see this as the next 2.0 version. And with the history of it all, moving away from the gold standard, Nixon, decided to do that. And really, now we're kind of in this system where we're just trusting that the paper dollars are actually worth what they're worth. And that's why I really believe that the biggest catalyst, aside from just the news today of the crypto summit that's happening, the biggest catalyst that I think would really drive more liquidity into the markets is what Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been saying that they're going to do, which is to actually go see if the gold is at Fort Knox, right? Is the gold actually there? And I think a lot of the conspiracy jargon that gets thrown around when it comes to just the history of our nation is really based off of whether that gold is actually there. And so if it is there, great. We can build upon it, and we can really have an accounting system that's accurate, and one that may be even put on a blockchain ledger in the future. That would be amazing. But if the gold is not there, and the conspiracy theorists are right again, or maybe it's not fully there, I think you're going to see an even bigger push towards digital assets, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin in general. And that's really the biggest, catalyst on the horizon that I see that could really move markets, along with all these great announcements that we're hearing. The SEC is dropping so many lawsuits against, renowned cryptos like XRP and others, Coinbase included. And this is all bullish news, where now the government is starting to change their tune. Whereas under the Democrats or the left leadership, they have, been trying to stifle innovation, in my opinion, and have been closed off to embracing crypto, and been saying, because they really value, the actual investor and want to protect them, right? Which that's their devil's advocate position. But I believe that regulation that is going to really create innovation is what we really need, and to bring it back home, because the crypto industry has become an offshore industry, unfortunately, to the United States. Whereas with all these regulations, I believe that we'll have a lot of that innovation come back home.
Yep. And I think what it gets to is that these bureaucrats, excuse me, are not able to, right? They're not able to regulate crypto, right? And this is something that's independent of the government. I mean,
Right.
you're starting to, see ways that the government is trying to get creative, and you have people like Elizabeth Warren, who's, made it her mission to just, destroy crypto. She comes from the Consumer Financial Bureau, and she's, I don't like her, but she's actually said some interesting things in the past. I'll say that about, what's going on, like with Wall Street, right?
Correct.
And maybe that leads into 2008, right? With Wall Street, right? And the financial crisis, and I think that's kind of, right? Bitcoin was created in 2008. The financial crash happened in 2008. Like, how are those connected?
So whether they're actually connected, one and the same, or just divine timing, who knows, right? But I believe that the world at the moment was looking for alternatives, right? Where the crash was happening real time, and a seed was planted, and it started with the white paper, right? Satoshi Nakamoto writes this white paper, and it really changes everyone's paradigm of money, right? And we realized that, wow, maybe we could use computers to actually become the middlemen that we can rely on always, right? And that trust, I think, is really where a lot of the pioneers in crypto were really putting their faith into, which is the vision of what Satoshi Nakamoto really was putting forth. Now, whether if it's NSA operation or the CIA had something to do with it, you get into rabbit hole conspiracies on the origins and who is Satoshi Nakamoto and where does he come from. And there's all sorts of, plausible conclusions. But what I really believe it was a actual social experiment. Bitcoin was a beta tested currency, BTC, right? That was rolled out to the people to see if we would get it. And it wasn't until 4 years after I heard about it in 2013, maybe like 2016, 2017, that I fully got it. And I credit it to a buddy of mine who, was going down the same intellectual rabbit holes of what is the blockchain, what is crypto, what is Bitcoin. And then we came to these miners, right? Which are these computers, right? These computers that are processing the transactions on this global network. And that to me fascinated me. And I said, well, who controls these computers? And everything that I was researching was saying that we, the people, control the network. And so I said, so if I can find the components to create one in my garage and plug it into the network, I could have a piece of what's going on and be able to contribute to the transactions being processed and be rewarded for that on a micro level. That was the big aha moment when a buddy of mine and I assembled this miner in our garage, hooked it up to our wallets, and we're mining Monero, Zcash, Doge. And he was more of the Woz, he was more of the tinkerer, assembling everything. And I was more of the philosophical kind of guy, maybe more of the jobs. But really understanding the business and how to really make it more than just this technical thing, but how it's really going to impact you and I. And that's really when my eyes opened to that these computers have become the new middlemen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you see it from that perspective, you see that the governments and big banks, they're threatened by that because now that is full independence where you and I are now bartering from one digital wallet to another, and the crypto tokens are being moved by these miners in a proof of work setup. And that is how Bitcoin operates today. And so it's secure because it's distributed all across the world. If you wanted to hack Bitcoin's entire network, you would need what they call a 51% attack, meaning you'd have to hack 51% of all of the nodes or all of the computers that are globally scattered all across the world all at once. And the only thing that I really believe that has the power to do that would be the quantum computer. And whether that exists today or not, who knows? That's where the world is headed, and that's a problem for the future. But I anticipate that is where we're headed, where blockchain is the foundation of it all. And then you have all of these blockchain ledger tokens that are interconnecting and interoperable, creating a web of ledgers that we call Web3. And that's where the token economics piece really comes into it, because there's so many different classifications of tokens that you and I as entrepreneurs can now start to take advantage of to bake in value to also get a competitive advantage over those who haven't fully taken the red pill and awakened to all of this.
Gotcha. So like getting more people onto Web3 and away from the traditional Web2, right? Internet.
Yes.
Is basically how Web3 grows and the power becomes less centralized, right? And the bureaucracy, the powers that be lose their power, right? Because then it's more into the people and they have less control.
Right. And I don't see them completely, fading off into the abyss and never existing again, because we do need them. There are citizens who do need, centralization in their life. But the question for individuals is how much centralization and how much decentralization for the chapter in your life that you're in, right? Because as you go through different stages of your life, you realize, wow, you know, this is more priority to me. You know, I look at my parents, you know, and the stage that they're at in their life. I see them as legacy leavers, right? They want to leave a legacy for their children, right? And so creating a crypto strategy that supports that mindset is how I've helped them embrace Web3, right? And come into the decentralized world. For myself, I would consider myself a crypto evangelist, right? Or a full degen, that lives and embraces, all things crypto, all blockchain, and I believe in deregulation more than anything, right? But whether that's the type of recipe for everyone, may not be the case, right? Everyone usually starts from, being a beginner in crypto, where they either come from a financial traditionalist background and they want to start embracing digital assets because they may have been skeptical for a while, but they understand that it is growing and it is an emerging space and they want to get involved. Or they're a technology enthusiast, and they're jumping in, because they heard about how these decentralizing technologies are really going to empower individuals. And that beginning stage really is the exciting part. But then you start to really embrace a strategy of whether you're going to be an active investor or an active trader in crypto. And those two mindsets are different. And they have different wallet setups that may be more conducive for trades that would be more long-term or short-term. And then you always have to weigh in security. Is everything that I'm doing in the crypto world secure, right? And has to be at the forefront of everything you do as you venture into the crypto world, because then people make mistakes and then they blame crypto. And most of the time in crypto, yes, there are scam projects. I believe 99% of cryptos out there are scams, but it's the 1% that aren't that is really the opportunity for you and I.
Yep. And that's where you come in, right, with your coaching business, right? Being, as you call yourself, a crypto coach, right, for people that are new to crypto and trying to understand it, right? I mean, kind of walk us through your business model and the value you provide to the people that you work with, right? To your customers and clients.
Most definitely. As a crypto coach, I help people jump into the world of crypto safely. And the way I do it is by planting the seed of self-custody in their mind, letting them know that the whole idea of crypto is to take ownership of your money and to really become your own bank, right? And if you're not ready to fully embrace that, to what degree are you looking to jump into this decentralized world? And what degree do we still want to keep the foundational components of traditional finance still in there? And most people start off as beginners, and then they realize, wow, I kind of want to be a bit more hands-off, right? With my crypto. I kind of want to set it and leave it, invest long-term. And for that, security needs to be prioritized, right? And to create an ecosystem of wallets that would really prioritize security. Those who are traders that see the opportunities of the volatility and the fluctuations of up and down motions, they may need an ecosystem that would be more conducive for trading. And so to set them up with that ecosystem is what I walk them through. Most just kind of download an app like Coinbase or some other centralized exchange, and they leave their crypto on those platforms. And unfortunately, they run into a FTX style issue where, like, Sam Bankman-Fried, was the CEO of FTX, and he had a lot of users come and purchase crypto on their platforms, and they left their tokens in the wallets that are in the actual FTX app. And so as the company went under, all the coins and tokens that they left on the app went with it. And so now they're seeing, years later, payouts that are slowly trickling out to really try to reconcile this wrong. But most of it was user error, where the actual people who were buying the crypto needed to move it over to a self-custody wallet where they own the keys to their castle instead of a company like FTX or Coinbase or some other centralized exchange. And so to get beginners to understand that, that's really where my business comes in. And as a crypto coach, I come in and help people not only understand what self-custody is, but how to set up an ecosystem that will really be conducive to either security or convenience for short-term trade so that they can come in and out of the market as they see fit.
Talk about tokenization, right?
Yep.
NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so when it comes to NFTs, most people see it as like digital art because that's how it was presented to the world, right? You had, the Bored Ape Yacht Clubs and all types of NFT projects that really took wind with celebrities, right? And what did it give you? It gave you access and perks to, specific events where you may rub elbows with some celebrities or something like that, or other owners of these NFTs, right? And that's what really drove the value of these digital tokens. And as, NFTs started to evolve, marketplaces were created around it. You get marketplaces like OpenSea, where creators now started to, have their own line of NFTs that they were really selling to the public in the forms of digital art. But the beautiful part about this was not that it was art, but it was that we could digitally program value into the art. And that's where NFTs are kind of revolutionizing the space, where now you can give perks to the owners who own the tokens that would really incentivize them to want to even purchase it in the first place. So an example, you can take, a form of art like a Picasso and fractionalize it into 100 NFTs, where now 100 individual fanatics of Picasso can now buy a 100th of his actual artwork. And it can hold a 100th of its value, right? Could be another store of value against the dollar, right? These are other alternatives that have really emerged over time, but it's just another use case of blockchain technology. I can give you another example that I'm really kind of, at the intersection of another industry that's adopting blockchain, but it's creating a different style of token, a real estate token, right? So I work with a company called RE Tokens that what they're doing is they're tokenizing real estate. But these real estate assets, they fall under securities law, right? In the traditional financial world. So how would it intertwine with that crypto digital blockchain that you're talking about, right? The same way that the traditional framework has outlined, and so what we're doing is we're creating what they call security tokens, which are embracing all of the regulations that securities law would have for traditional real estate, but now just baking all of that value into the actual token, which would be called the real estate token. And so these are just different applications of the same technology that are now creating that token economy that I was alluding to earlier. And you're going to see a lot of different industries be disrupted. Supply chain industries will be moved onto the blockchain, where now you can really see every stage of the transaction process and trace it back to its origin and build trust that, hey, this actually is organic fruit that I'm buying at the Vons, you know what I mean? And be able to hold the companies accountable for what it is they're putting on, as their marketing for their labels, and so that's how I see blockchain disrupting everything, but for the better. This is all process improvement, efficiencies that are now becoming, at the forefront, and then finding a way for it all to interconnect in the end is that whole vision for a Web3 decentralized future world. You know?
Absolutely. So on decentralization and centralization are a core theme of this conversation, right?
Right.
And this goes into politics, right? Of
Yeah.
we shift from the Biden administration, which he tried to herald himself as the new FDR, and we are living in a state of government because of FDR, right? Who was almost the closest thing to a king that the United States ever had, right? He broke the precedent of serving 2 terms, right? Expanded the bureaucracy, right? He was the first one that said, let's expand the Supreme Court, right? And his inaugural address says, Congress, if you don't get your act together, I'm going to write executive orders. And so that's a tangent, but what I'm getting to on that is we're living in a state of the United States because of FDR and what he did in those 12 years as president. And so now, right, shifting from Biden to Donald J. Trump and Elon Musk heading up Doge, right? It's this transition from a trying to scale back, right?
Right.
And, this kind of opens it up, right, into going forward. I mean, where do you see things shifting over the next 4 years? And again, you're someone who's been prophetic in politics, right?
Right.
Let's kind of open up the conversation and talk about, what you've seen so far with this new Trump administration.
Yeah. Starting with the bureaucracy from FDR, it's really kind of moved us into this welfare state type of framework where now you have administrative agencies that have really concentrated a lot of power in the hands of the United States today that we see, right? Which kind of moves away from what the founding fathers really intended with our Constitution, right? They understood that a limited government was what was really going to allow the freedom of the individual to thrive. And so I believe the same, and I believe that Donald Trump's policies will also reflect that as well. As we move to more of this, constitutional style stripping back of these agencies using Doge and Elon Musk and all their efforts to expose where the inefficiencies have actually been, I think is absolutely beautiful. We're at a moment where transparency and artificial intelligence are 2 big narratives that are now converging on the scale of government. And so Doge being able to use AI to sift through all of the noise and find the needles in the haystacks of where these inefficiencies are is the first step. But the second step will be the transparency, and that I believe the blockchain ledger could also give we the people. And so as we move, away from, the centralization of power in the hands of the state, now I believe they're trying to redistribute that back to we the people and doing it through these digital platforms. This redistribution of wealth is happening to those that have their ear to the floor and are listening and seeing that, hey, crypto is taking off and I could get involved. I just need to have a smartphone and have a will to really want to learn. Really, and that's really the what I see the future really needs is for people to really want to embrace this for themselves, for their families, and for their nation. And the ripples that come with that will be the byproduct of a strong nation that really has solidified their place in the movement of money towards these digital assets. And getting into the Trump administration, we've always seen that Donald Trump was bullish on crypto and was going to really institute, a totally different policy than the Biden administration, which had been to really regulate everything as security.
I think he actually was somebody that may have, I have to fact check this, but I think he was somebody that was skeptical of crypto at first, which I feel like, we evolve, we process information,
Right.
and now he's somebody who's embraced it, right? Which, good, for somebody to be able to change their minds. I think we have this thing we like to do in politics is go back on what somebody said 10 years ago and hold them to it. I'm like, okay, do we not have the brain elasticity to change our opinions?
Correct.
So, what I like about Donald Trump, obviously, the many things is that being a businessman, he's innovative, right? If you don't innovate, you die, right? Like it's the bottom line driven. I think he brings that mentality to government. And so, his embrace of crypto is
Right.
very encouraging.
Super encouraging, and it's evolved over time. And I think a big influence had to be his family. His sons are actually big advocates for the crypto space and the Web3 movement. And so I believe that not only just young Barron, but Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, they're very involved in the shift in finance that's happening. And so if you even look at some of their tweets, they even tweeted, at the beginning of February, like, hey, take a look at Ethereum this month because it has come down so much. But I anticipate that, as you follow wallets that they own as a family too, you see them moving their crypto and how they've bought up 10 million of Bitcoin and Ethereum in the last couple days leading up to this crypto summit. And so they're stockpiling, and you can see that on chain. And so be able to, allocate your own funds at a fractional level to also ride that same wave with them. And so that's why, for me, I believe that crypto is a global marketing campaign to we the people, that there is a shift happening in the global fiat system. And this shock is incremental. But just even the emergence of Doge is a perfect example of it. Dogecoin has been around since 2013. My buddy and I were mining Dogecoin in 2016 with our miner. And now you're telling me that there is a crypto president that has instituted a Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, to now hold the government accountable for all of their misuse. That to me is not a coincidence. And I think as people start to wake up to the subliminal signs that the patriots that really embody the values of our founding are really embracing this shift, it's our duty to not only take action, but to also evangelize the space, showcase it to the world, let them know that this is coming, because this transition is not only going to cause ripples for just individuals, but for future generations, for families. And that's what really drives me and why I'm so passionate about the space, why I've been evangelist that gets in front of crowds and does events to really showcase, the market and where it's headed, because I believe that this is the opportunity of a lifetime. And I believe that we are prancing around a world where we're going to go one of two directions. Either this decentralized future of token economics that I'm talking about, or something a bit more dystopian, like a surveillance state, right? The evolution of that welfare state that was started by FDR back in the days, right? And I believe that it'll happen incrementally, this totalitarian tiptoe. But in the end, as surveillance becomes, the main focal point, decentralized surveillance will also be a part of it, where now people will sell their souls and give consent, right? The left loves that word, consent, right? Because I believe that the surveillance state will also be given up by consent, where now your Tesla camera, you can maybe give up access to that surveillance camera to the centralized state, and they'll pay you $200 a month, right? Because you own that data, right? But now they have created a network of surveillance cameras that will create their surveillance state for them, And so that's how we, the people, will play a role in the dystopian side of it. But we need to be aware of it, and we need to be aware that this is happening and that we're moving in a data-driven world, and this information age is here, and we have the opportunity to monetize that data, but at what sacrifice on a collective scale too, So we have to grapple as individuals with how much centralization and how much decentralization we really want in our lives, right? And how much privacy and transparency are really going to be the right combination for us to still embrace freedom,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where, we may have, full security, how Elon Musk says with AI, right? Maybe no wars, but what's the cost of no war? Full surveillance and maybe no freedom of privacy,
Yep.
you know?
Well, I think, I'm a pragmatist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to school, I was, studied under, Austrian School of Economics, which is very libertarian. And I
Yeah.
think that gave me a good foundation of how to look at the world, but also, right, kind of shifting away. And after graduating from school, just looking strictly in an economic lens of libertarianism, it's great in theory, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to also, right, as Plato says, there's the world the way we want it to be and the way that the world is. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do think that there's a pragmatic way of doing that, right? Because, as someone who's a military guy, right, do I want all of our, things that we're working on that are our top, our weapons, our new technologies in the military, that gets out, well, then our adversaries have an advantage, right? So
Right.
I obviously err on the side of more transparency and
Mm-hmm.
and privacy, but also at the same time understand, there's certain things we, probably don't want everybody to know,
Yes,
right?
100%. And that really kind of brings it back to the way that business is handled today, right? It is in a competitive advantage type of way, right? Where, you have to compete for the markets of the people. And what I see is that a shift needs to also happen into maybe more of a collaborative mindset, where every person who has their or nation that has their competitive advantage, they can bring something unique to the table to really provide additional value, right? And finding the ability to balance that, I believe that that's what Donald Trump and all the leaders of tomorrow really have to grapple with, right? Is how much collaboration, how much competition, how much privacy, how much transparency do we give, and in what realms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because from a military aspect, of course, I believe that a strong military, is what the United States needs. Peace via strength, right? Peace through strength, right? And that's where the United States needs to still take their position as leaders of the free world and now move us into this new information age, or what we call a quantum financial system, where we can also uplift other nations with us as well. Because that's a big part of crypto that I think we in the free world also maybe lose sight of because it's maybe not at our forefront of our day to day, but crypto is also allowing those who don't have access to banking to really jump into the world of banking and become their own bank. So countries like Africa, they have a literacy rate of like 70% when it comes to digital assets and wallets and crypto, because there's no bank that's actually close in proximity for them to go access, right? And they don't have a lot of money to even store in the first place, right? They're looking for running water in these societies, right? And so that's where these technologies are also helping uplift, some of these cultures that may not have been embracing centralized banking, and that's where crypto will really kind of play a global role. And we as the leaders in the free world and the leaders of crypto moving forward will embrace that responsibility as well to really cause the ripples that we want to see in the world. And that's really the big responsibility. Like, how do we play a global role all the while sticking true to us as a sovereign nation, right? And I believe that there is global entities that are being created with the BRICS nations, with NAFTA agreements, with the World Economic Forum, and whether that's actually beneficial for sovereign nations or not has been at the forefront of this political debate. And really what Donald Trump represents is him declaring that individual sovereign nations will collaborate with one another in competition. And leaders will have to put their people first where they may have been sacrificing that, at the behest of this globalist agenda, that has really, overtaken a lot of people's national agendas, whereas that's what MAGA really represents. And I think that that's why a lot of other nations are embracing MAGA in their own way, like Milei from Argentina or Bukele from El Salvador. And with that comes the embracing of digital assets too.
100%. Let's talk about BRICS,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a good note to kind of transition to of what's going on, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China. I'm sorry, what's the S?
It's actually South Africa.
South Africa, okay.
But I believe the Saudis also jumped in too, so
Okay.
there may be multiple S's now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other nations that have joined them, though. They were just the original ones.
Okay, so basically the goal of BRICS, right, is to, weaken the U.S. dollar, right? I mean, and they kind of want to create their own currency, or is it that they want to be able to lift up one of those nations' currencies to weaken the dollar? Can you kind of go into BRICS and explain that?
So the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and many other countries that have joined them, they've all kind of coalesced to fight the G20 and all these other powerhouses globally when it comes to economics, right? And what they're saying is that even just between, China, Russia, and India, their populations between those three nations are about a third of the world. And so what they want to do is they want to isolate their own market. They want to take their people and they want to be able to do their own bartering of goods and services, all within this separate ecosystem where they will not transact in the United States dollar anymore, right? Moving away from it as the global reserve currency, right? And they flirted with the idea of a digital currency to rival the dollar because they see it as superior because it's programmable money, right? And with a fiat dollar being paper, you can't really control it as sound as you can, a central bank digital currency of some sort, right? And so individual nations have flirted with the idea of rolling out their own central bank digital currencies that would just be the crypto versions of their fiat currency. And this BRICS nations have coalesced around this idea. And I believe that they're just trying to take a bite out of the markets that the United States dollar has, and that really is a threat because, the whole world really transacts in dollars right now. And so whether they pick a Bitcoin, an XRP, an Ethereum, or they pick some type of new introduced central bank digital currency type of digital asset, who knows? But I anticipate that the whole purpose of their existence is to really rival the markets of the United States dollar. And I see Donald Trump taking the stance of, okay, if that's how you want to be, then we'll also put, restrictions, tariffs, and all types of sanctions on your nation when they want to play ball in our markets. Because in the end, we have the consumers. We have the individuals who have the money, right, in our markets. And so we're going to see the competition between Russia, India, China, and the United States, competing for the global consumer markets.
What do you think about what President Trump is doing with tariffs?
I think that his position of strength is really good right now. I think that he's come in the first 45 days and has really been a powerhouse, has unleashed a whole bunch of executive orders, including the crypto reserve that he had promised to everyone. We're watching the tariffs now come underway. And we've also preemptively told other leaders that these tariffs are coming, so that they could get their ducks in a row to really come to the table and negotiate with the commander in chief. And that's what's really happening right now. As we speak, I assume that Donald Trump is using the art of the deal, what he's born for, to negotiate on our behalf and really get our best interest out of everything. You look at the Ukraine and Russia war and everything, all the stances that he's had, and really being firm with them and really trying to get collateral for a lot of the taxpayer dollars that we've already sent in billions that have actually been acknowledged, and billions that may or may not have arrived. And so we're starting to see really what had been happening over the past 4 years that people like you and I had been warning about, and really telling people that, hey, there's a mass propaganda that's happening on these mainstream media outlets that are pushing the United States into endless wars, pushing us into a global footprint that we don't want to have involvement in, right? And that's where I see the tariffs playing a huge role in that, to really see which countries are going to play ball and which countries are going to be adversaries, And I think that what Donald Trump is seeing on a global stage is leaders' true colors show as we speak, and then allowing leaders to also show them to the rest of the world through the media.
So you have what you call the crypto personality spectrum,
Yeah.
right? Going from beginners to extremes, and that goes through, right, someone's interest in the crypto and also kind of coincides with their political angle. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so person like you and I, we come from, freedom-loving, constitutional backgrounds, right? And so when I really look at the patriots that share those same ideals, it's an easy conversation when it comes to cryptocurrency and what freedoms, digital assets can really bring us. And I started to realize that those who are on, the more leftist side of the spectrum believed in more centralization, and that really didn't allow them to really embrace crypto because they had taken a regulatory stance on it, meaning that they were going to, wait for governments to embrace crypto before they dip their toes in or allocate $1 to investing on their own, right? And I call these people conscious regulators, right? Because they have good intentions, but they're so locked into the traditional framework and the centralized matrix that it doesn't allow them to really fully embrace it. And those would be my regulator type of personalities, right? Which would be furthest on the left side of the spectrum. I'm not advocating for people to be like me on the furthest of the right side of the spectrum as a deregulator or a crypto degen or somebody that lives crypto, right? Whereas what I try to encourage them to be is more centrist, right? And be balanced. And how can they swing from a healthy level left to a healthy level right and really fully embrace crypto in a way that's going to allow them to thrive? And the way that I see that is beginners, they come in and they're either optimistic or pessimistic on the crypto space. And then after that, I found that these beginners would venture either into a trading mindset or an investing mindset. And but the tools in which they were venturing weren't supporting that mindset. And that's where so many people were going wrong. And so I created a spectrum where I could, like Carl Jung in psychology, we could take 12 personality types and really have people self-identify what their mindset already is so that I could tell whether they're more of an investor or more of a trader type of personality. And then that would allow me to then create a digital ecosystem that supports them to be that, right? And that's really the whole purpose and why I created that, was to personalize crypto for everyone and make it practical so that, people wouldn't allow the political leanings or their own bias to really dictate, their stance on cryptocurrency or embracing Web3 or jumping in, and really learning the space and how they can embrace it, right? And so that's why I created the crypto spectrum, right? To really showcase to people where they are and, most importantly, where they want to be. Because I'm sure they could take my test and they could see where they are, but in their mind they're saying, hey, but I want to strive to be this personality. And what I do is I try to help bridge that gap for them, right? Knowing where they are today, where they want to be, and what is the digital ecosystem of wallets that's going to support that, so that they can embrace crypto as an investor or a trader. But really, the ideal person is actually doing both and, Instead of being one or the other, you fully encompass the trading mindset and the investing mindset, like myself. And that's when you'll find yourself wanting to really be a fully crypto degen person living it,
I love the tailored approach that you take, right? Having them take that test of where they are, right? And kind of walking, showing them, and having that mind of like the journey. I think that's really,
Yeah,
really, really forward thinking.
it is a crypto journey, right? And I think a lot of people just need someone to hold their hand through it, right? And walk along the steps that they would ideally take, but are too scared to venture on their own. And that's where I kind of come in, right? Is to really help them out on that crypto journey, and hold their hand through that process so that they feel confident, embracing this.
100%.
Mhm.
All right. Just going through making crypto practical, right? Is what you
Yeah,
talked
yeah, yeah,
about, right? From beginners.
yeah.
Let's revisit on a topic that you mentioned, right? Becoming your own bank,
Right.
right? I know you hit on that, but let's kind of hone in, right? About, I think, what you're selling, right? Exit the system, right?
Hmm.
Secure your assets
Right.
and generate wealth outside of the banks.
Right. And that's really what it is. All these digital asset platforms have really allowed us to now, from the palm of our hand, become our own bank. Have our own digital bank accounts where we can, you know, allocate our funds and see it appreciate over time because we have confidence in the coins and the tokens that have solidified their place in the economy of tomorrow. And that appreciation is more of a long-term investing mindset that I encourage everyone to start out with, right? As opposed to jumping into trading and the volatility of the up and downs, but really just understanding the space, what is what, which cryptos have already made partnership with big governments and big businesses and big tech, and then see how that bridge is being created between that decentralized finance island and the mainland of traditional finance. Because that bridge is where I live and breathe. Is how it's being built actively and how are we going to make it more accessible for people to go and come very seamlessly and easy and jump into it knowing that they're doing it safely, because that's the biggest concern. And I think that the education curve is really the biggest hurdle for most, right? So if you can really start to just embrace the vocabulary, the terminology of some of these platforms, exchanges, wallets, right? blockchains, cryptos, tokens, Web3, right? These vocabulary terms will start to create more of an image over time, and you'll start to kind of piece the puzzle together. We've given the audience, a couple puzzle pieces here today to be able to kind of see the picture, but all the details and all the rabbit holes that you can go down are ever changing. And so having a streamlined approach is what I really help people do as well, is to be able to take it in bits and pieces, right? Take it in a way where you're going to make incremental steps that you're going to see the actual, not only returns, but your own growth in the space over time. And that's when you start really fully embracing the idea of becoming your own bank. Because I anticipate that right now we're just buying and selling cryptos, right? And we're, trading them per se. Tomorrow, you're going to be able to pledge these cryptos as collateral for loans. So now you're actually going to be able to utilize them in the centralized world as value to be able to go get a loan from a bank, because the bank recognizes it as value. And that's really where the Web3 tokenized world wants to take crypto. And that will be really the full embracement of traditional finance once we get there. But setting up all the on and off ramps for money to flow is really where we're at in the chapter or the stage, current evolution of crypto. Where we're going to see more people start to create on and off ramps to their bank accounts to get into the digital world, and then not see the need to even bring it back to the traditional bank because they're transacting peer-to-peer with people, right? Digitally bartering with people. And that's really the token economics that I see. And the red pill that I really would like to plant in the consciousness of all your audience here really is that vision for that decentralized future. Because I see it very clearly. That's the world that I live in and day out. And I see us inching towards it. And that's what I want to talk about on my YouTube channel that I'm rolling out. I call it the tokenized matrix, right? To really showcase how everyone is really moving into digital tokens being the foundation of this economy of the future. So the quicker we embrace it, we'll be the pioneers and the early adopters that will embrace that blue ocean, where the competition is minimal, because a lot of people haven't even seen the wave that is really coming. And as nations, big businesses start to allocate 1 to 3% of their portfolios into digital assets, we're going to see a $3 trillion market go to 10 plus, 20 plus trillion. And the price levels that we're currently at today are going to be inflated even further. And that's the vision I see.
100%. Mm-hmm. So what can people do, right? What can people do right now to get to, they feel they need to take action? What do they do?
Yeah, so the first step would be to educate yourself. I have a lot of free resources on my website, redpillrick.com, or if you go on to the tokenizedmatrix.com, it'll also lead you to all my free resources where I have infographics, 300 blog posts, vocabulary terms, and also self-custody guides to showcase to you the different types of wallets. And if you needed help, I also have self-custody services where I could, walk you down and set you up, with a crypto quick start, which is my onboarding, package that I do for anyone that really wants to embrace crypto safely, or crypto safe storage, which would be to really secure your crypto on what we call a cold storage, which is a digital wallet that is completely secure and offline. So for long-term holdings, this would be, the wallet of choice that you would want to go with. So holding people's hands to help them set those up and showcasing them how they could transfer their funds to it is how I kind of help get people into the world of crypto safely, where they can create that digital ecosystem of wallets for themselves to have a crypto checking account and a crypto savings account, right? So that you can then fully connect to the world of Web3. And that is really what I do with Red Pill Rick. You know, for those that are looking for advanced topics like tokenizing real estate, you know, I work with RE Tokens as a tokenization capital strategist to help syndicators, sponsors, real estate owners that have a lot of trapped equity and really want to fractionalize that and digitize it using tokens. We can help you out with that as well. And what that does is their investors will be able to have, you know, a lot more flexibility with their investment to do as they please with it and not be locked in for long terms or anything like that. And that's just one other use case that blockchain is really disrupting, you know, traditional industries like real estate.
So, any final or parting thoughts?
Final thoughts would be, I guess my final thoughts would be to just fully embrace crypto incrementally and start where you are. You know, wherever you are in your crypto journey, this is for you. If you have a bank account and you have money, understanding that we're living in a digital world and a digital environment is how each of us need to adapt and really start to embrace these technologies to be able to thrive in the digital age.
Thank you, Ricardo.
I appreciate you. Thanks, Morgan.
All right.